Well, we're technically live, so we'll find out if anybody joins us. See if it shows I have anybody on there.
I'm on it. Can you see me?
Nope, still says 0 viewers. Oh, there's one viewer.
Me.
There's you. You're here live and electronically. Double information input. All right. Excuse me. Whenever I have to do public speaking, even though it's YouTube right now, eventually some people will probably be jumping on, and then I know they're going to have to watch it. That makes me a little nervous, so start to sweat. Hey, Shanna. Cool. Okay. So, the fitness challenge that we came up with, this is actually the suggestion and brainchild of Mark Naccarato and Chris Zimmerman. And when they said, hey, let's do a fitness challenge using the InBody and measure different metrics besides just body fat, I was like, that's an awesome idea. That's fantastic because that makes it something that anybody can participate in across the board. So it doesn't matter what your goals are. It allows for you to make gains and improvements in multiple areas, even if one area is something you don't want to change, right? So like not everybody's goal is to increase muscle mass. You do want to get stronger. Your bones will get denser and your muscles will get denser. In the process, doesn't necessarily mean you increase in size, but that will increase the weight of your dry lean mass and skeletal muscle mass. And if you lose body fat, then we take that, take that into consideration on the total fat mass of your body. So it measures the change in the viscous fat, which is the dense, deep fat around your organs, and I don't remember the term for the other fat, just white fat. One's brown, one's gray, kind of thing. So it does total fat mass loss as well. And then in the process, especially if you make changes in bone density and muscle mass changes, it will affect your basal metabolic rate, so your BMR. That determines how many calories you burn within a day. So the 4 categories and criteria that we're going to use with the InBody, so I should put that here, InBody, are determined by your dry lean mass, your skeletal muscle mass, basal metabolic rate, and total fat mass. So within these 4 categories here, we get points based on the InBody assessment. There is a subcategory that just came to fruition to continue to increase engagement, because one of the things that we noticed in the past is like we start a challenge, we do a 4-week, 6-week challenge, and a number of participants would kind of fade away 2 or 3 weeks into it, because usually it was like a weight loss challenge or a nutrition challenge, and it's like we're going to follow this diet and we score points based on the parameters of the diet, and that gets tough, right? It gets tough. It almost becomes binding for some people. So to avoid that, that's why we came through here, because it allows for us to follow a nutrition program that works for us, right? So nutrition is a high focus. Nutrition is a high focus for this, because a lot of these changes aren't just necessarily created through workout alone, right? Not really, right? Workout alone won't really make drastic changes in here. Unless you're new to exercise, you'll see a difference. But if you don't change anything in your nutrition, usually you exercise, your appetite goes up, you eat more, and these all increase, but so does that total fat mass if we don't make any changes in our nutrition. So what this does is it allows for us to work on a nutrition program that works for us, individuals. You're not limited or binded to a specific nutrition challenge. You find something that helps you achieve your goals, right? If someone wants to gain more muscle, they're going to eat a higher, denser protein diet and fat in order to bulk up muscle, right? And somebody that's trying to lose fat is really going to want to be working on eating leaner meat and less processed fats and cut down on simple carbohydrates, right? So by kind of like looking at the paleo diet, that's a great parameter for us if we start implementing several of those types of meals. It's going to make a change in our nutrition. We can still eat something we enjoy, right? So nutrition is a major focus here, but our subcategory, coming back to that, which is going to help with engagement, is going to be through social interaction. So the social interaction is going to have a little bit of bump to our scores, okay? It is going to be limited only because we don't want somebody to try and take advantage of this if they don't make any changes here. The focus is here, but the engagement and the encouragement with each other comes through the social interaction, okay? Posting on the social page, interacting through Wodify, all right? But Wodify, we're talking about comments, not just liking things. So like, if we're posting on the social page, this thumbs up on a liked comment is not gonna count as a social interaction. Or a way to go, good job. That's not necessarily gonna count on a social interaction, only because what we're looking for is input, encouragement, motivation. Example, someone says, hey, I found a fantastic recipe for anybody that has a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Vice. Hint, hint, right? If you got a substitute for peanut butter and chocolate, I would love to see that because I will socially interact with you then, right? Because that's something that pulls me back from my engagement with nutrition sometimes. It's a little bit of a vice. But if someone posted something like that, hey, here's a recipe for a snack that helps curb that kind of craving, then I'm going to socially interact. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try this, boom, tomorrow, right? That's the kind of engagement that we're looking for and encouragement. And if we're struggling, posting that, asking for help, ideas, encouraging some type of accountability, which is also so we have one avenue of doing that through the social page, right? Okay, that's something that I can monitor, and a select group or committee that I'll be asking for volunteers to help with this, to keep track of this information, because Facebook and I aren't very great friends as far as notifications are. So we'll keep track of that and then put that within the score, okay? And then the other is I'm going to have the social wall, or whatever other name we want to come up with it. It's kind of like a graffiti board of comments. So we'll make like markers available. I'm going to have this board open and available for people to write on. We'll take some things down after a period of time, especially if it's going to start getting cluttered, right? Probably take a picture of it and send it through the social media or email if people want to have what's on the board, okay? So we have like, I'm just going to call it for now the graffiti and butcher that word, board, most likely. Graffiti, is that graffiti? Yes, 2 for 2. All right. So we'll have our social page and our graffiti board. Now we get to the point, like, how do we score points? How do we rank on this? You know, figure out where we are. What we're going to do for the point system, is it correct? 2 F's, 1 T. I will change it so that way if someone does take a picture of it. There you go. All right. So our point system is going to be as follows. Fat mass is one of the easier things to lose. Okay? So it's going to be 1 point per 1/10 of a pound. Right? So 1/10 of a pound. That's not that much. Which is why this 6-week window is something that can work. Because if we're losing fat at a healthy rate, say we have 20 pounds to lose, for example, a healthy rate of fat loss per week is 2 to 3 pounds. Any more of that, then we're kind of doing a crash diet that's unhealthy. Okay? Body has to shift and adjust drastically, and bunches of things change at that point, right? If we're losing weight too rapidly. So this is also to help kind of detour that mentality or that process and thinking, because we have these other 3 categories in place, and we'll talk about like what a crash diet would do. Okay? Basal metabolic rate. If your basal metabolic rate, which is how many calories you burn within a day just to exist, if I had you laying on the floor for 24 hours here, sleeping for 8 of them, and staring at the ceiling for 16, and that's it, that's how many calories your body would burn just to exist, to repair and function and have its normal process go about itself, okay? Every calorie increase here on your basal metabolic rate, that's going to be 2 points per cal change, right? Skeletal muscle mass. It's much harder to put on muscle and build muscle. So that's going to be 5 points per 1/10 of a pound, right? Dry lean mass, essentially skeletal density, okay? That measurement, everything in your body that's not wet, like muscles, mucus, organs, fat, everything. Skeleton. So this is going to be improving bone density. If we increase here, this is harder to increase, but doing workouts under load increases skeletal density. This is 15 points per 1/10 of a pound. Okay? So it's very, very kind of like even throughout the board, because say like somebody at the end of 6 weeks loses 12 pounds. That's 120 points. If someone in that 6 weeks increases 3 pounds of muscle, we're looking at 150 points in muscle, and say they get 2/10 of skeleton increase in pound, that's 180 points total, right? So it is hard work to increase muscle mass, which is why the reward is there. However, you know, if you are losing fat and gaining muscle in the process, racking up the points, okay? The caveat to that whole thing right there is the reason why we are going to deter crash dieting is because I have one example. I won't say this person by name because great person and does a lot for their fitness. But they were doing a fitness challenge that they read through a book, gave them great results. They were looking to shed a lot of body fat, and they did really well, very active, they ate. But when we did a follow-up reading after they were done with that, they lost muscle mass and skeletal lean mass because they weren't eating enough. They were doing way too much activity, cutting out a lot of the garbage and eating very cleanly, but they were not eating enough with the amount of activity that they were doing, right? So we got to be conscious of how much we're eating, right? We can't just do a crash diet and start shedding pounds, because we could be shedding them in the wrong areas, and then we'll lower our BMR. So like if you're noticing you're getting consistently sluggish and tired during the process, something's off in your nutrition. You need to eat more and take a look at your sleep. How are you sleeping? You know, it's going to come down to the nutrition. And you can lose points if you decrease in certain areas or increase in one. So this will also stop somebody from like, I'm going to bulk up and get a bunch of muscle during this time and do 2-a-days and have all sorts of creatine to get swole. But if you get swole around the midline in the process, those points will count against you. Okay? So it's 3 categories of gain and 1 category of loss. If we go the opposite direction in 1 or more categories, then we can lose points. Points deducted. Doesn't mean if you end up gaining 5 pounds of muscle and a pound of skeleton mass, but you gain 5 pounds of fat, doesn't mean that you're out of the running. It just means your point total is going to be a little lower than what you'd prefer it to be. Okay? Do you have any questions yet or anything? No? Hey, there's Mike Curtis. Nice of you to join us. Okay? So we're going to use the InBody metric here. Now, points for the engagement and encouragement. This is where it's kind of like extra credit. You can earn up to 3 points per week. Okay? You can earn up to 3 points per week. Points are 1/2 per social engagement. Okay? So if you respond or post, combination therein, 6 times within a week, you get an additional 3 points added to your score for that week. There's no points lost for this if you choose to not engage in the social interaction via the graffiti wall and or the social page. That's fine. You don't have to, but you lose out on the opportunity to earn the bonus points that are there. Okay? Again, this is here to help keep us motivated, right? Help encourage others and look for some information or find answers to something that we don't know. Asking a question about things in the process is engagement. So it's to encourage us to reach out to one another and support each other through this, okay? Now the big question is, like, in the past, we just implement a challenge and then we do something at the end of it. It's the first time that we've really had a buy-in for it. There is a cost, and the cost is $15 to participate. But what we're really looking at here is like the overall value of that. The InBody assessment alone, if you were to schedule an InBody assessment and you don't have a hybrid membership where it's included in your membership, it's a $25 appointment fee to come in, go through the InBody, and then go over the results and get a good idea of what we should do to change or improve things based on those results. Okay? So it's $25 per appointment. We're all going to get 2 InBody appointments during this time. So essentially, it's like $50 for 2 in bodies. With the cost of challenge. And we're going to take bulk of that actually and turn that around into a prize system. So actually the more people we have participates, the more payout we can have for people with the most points. Okay? And also kind of playing around with figuring a celebration thing or something like that. You know, I'm up for ideas. But that is the main focus through here within all of that. Seem pretty cut and dry? All right. Now we'll open up for questions, but I'm going to check the screen first because, oh, Kat, who's here, asked the question. Does the in-body account for water weight? Example, people weigh more in the evening than they do in the morning. Can we choose what time we do the in-body? That's an excellent question. As a matter of fact, I need to take a picture of this board. There's my phone. There it is. So I can erase it and kind of go over some of that. Yes. The in-body, make sure, can it see the bottom? Yeah, there it can. The in-body does account for water weight. As a matter of fact, it has a separate internal and external water percentage within the body. How much the water weight is for internal, which is like inside your cells and tissue, and then external, free-flowing liquids throughout your body, blood, mucus, all that jazz, right? It will measure that and give you a distribution weight and a percentage of where you should be. One of the things that we can consider here is like, it's not going to be one of the metrics measured for the points in the challenge, but it'll tell you whether or not you might be dehydrated or retaining water, okay? So that can be taken into consideration with your measurements, and then how to adjust that, like if there's something that we need to do to change that. If you're retaining water for not really any reason, your salt intake might be high, for example, right? So it's in there. And when it comes to the measurements themselves, take my picture. Take another one for backup. So for the in-body measurement, I just spell it out, because I abbreviate. Times, that's a big question. When? And also, preparation. All right, so for times, on Monday, this Monday, coming up, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I'm going to put in Wodify, just like tonight, with that one appointment, times to come in to do assessments. And you can sign up for that. Okay? So you sign up and come in at that time. So I'll have one around 9 o'clock. I'll have one around the evenings, you know, throughout there, and encourage people to get in. Now, say if you have yours on Tuesday in the evening, 6 weeks later, you're going to have yours Tuesday in the evening. Okay? So we'll have the times that you sign up to do your assessment, and then you're going to come back in 6 weeks at that same time, okay, to do your second reading to finish the challenge. So someone that starts on Monday can't necessarily come in on Wednesday just to get those 2 extra days of change to get their reading, just so nobody complains or is a little disgruntled about that at all. We'll just figure out when you're going to come in and schedule it out and do it 6 weeks later on the same day, same time period. Okay? Because as you said, and as you asked, Kat, people weigh different throughout the day. Sometimes heavier or lighter in the morning, and vice versa. You know, things fluctuate. Now, preparation. This is the main things you just really want to make sure that you adhere to before you come in to do your in-body. 1, don't eat a meal within 2 hours of your test. Okay? 2, don't drink more than 20 ounces water within an hour of test. 2A, avoid doing it within 30 minutes of test. And 3, try to go to the bathroom before test. Right? If any of these aren't quite followed, then what you want to do is let me know, and then we want to try and mimic the same experience before you take your test the second time. Right? I mean, if you get out of work and you're starving, you need to eat something, and then you come in and take your test, that's understandable. I mean, you don't want anybody coming in starving and being irritable and shaky. Just do it again. A little bit of something like what you had before you took your test. But I would recommend not doing that, okay? So, whichever time, either AM or PM on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll repeat that test 6 weeks from now, after that test. And then avoid eating a meal within 2 hours of your test. The food weight will throw your measurement off. Avoid drinking water because it will affect other aspects like total fat mass and change your water percentages. And then try to go to the bathroom, at least number 1, before you take your test. Make sense? Awesome. Does anybody else have any questions? Give a moment for people to type if they do. All right. So I'll put times in on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're kicking it off then to take the test. The graffiti board and the social media interaction will begin on Monday. Okay? And everybody will get their own results, and they won't be shared with everybody. Only maybe myself and maybe a select few will have access to data entry for the 4 categories. And that's all we're going to keep track of under one file that's not going to get posted. You can post your results if you want to. That's totally up to you. But for anybody that's concerned about having certain aspects of their information being public, we're going to keep that portion anonymous, so to speak. Payment, cash or Venmo for the $15. Cash would be fine. I still haven't had a chance to set up my own Venmo account to figure that part out. I think we can well, we'll want to try and stick with either cash or Venmo, and if there's another payment plan I can come up with, that's fine. But if we want to include that and tack that on to a membership or charge it through Wodify, we can do that. The only reason why I would prefer not to do that, not to like decrease the paper trail like the mob, no, it's because going in and out and getting taxed unnecessarily on stuff that's supposed to be going right back into the community. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to avoid, to have it just go, have this just basically go right back to the community for the challenge, and not screw with anything through my account. But if we have to do it, we have to do it. Okay, no big deal. Anything else? Anybody? No? Anybody else online? Oh, it's not letting me add a comment. Instead, it's doing all sorts of stupid things as I'm trying to type.
There's 6 people online, but you can't see it.
Me too. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and close it down. It went a little bit longer than I hoped, only because I didn't talk fast enough. Excuse me. So hopefully those that are interested will watch the video. If you know of anybody else in the gym that may have not heard about this, let them know. I'll see if I can take the video off the social page and upload it to YouTube on the GL CrossFit channel, and then people will be able to watch it there. And I'm happy to go back over any details that we might need to cover. All right. Thanks everybody for attending. Thank you guys for sticking around and listening to me speak. Woohoo! Bye everybody.